Hello. She had no idea I was observing her. Not that evening, nor during the week leading up to it, nor even the month before, when I first started to suspect, or more accurately, to know. There's a difference between suspicion and certainty. Suspicion makes you anxious. Certainty makes you silent, calculated, focused. I hadn't spoken to anyone in 6 days. I took time off work, claiming I had migraines. I didn't. I just needed silence to think, to strategize. I hadn't eaten a proper meal in 3 days. Only string cheese and dry cereal. I hadn't even changed my clothes. Same hoodie, same socks, and the same bruised pride accompanying me like an uninvited roommate. And tonight was the night because I knew exactly where she'd be. I'd known for weeks. Thursday was always their night. Always that bar, Grady's Hollow, with the cracked mirror behind the bar and soft yellow lighting that made everyone appear more attractive than they were. She thought I was oblivious. She was mistaken. Let me clarify something. This isn't a story of vengeance. Not in the way you might expect. I didn't go there to create a scene, throw drinks, or punch the guy. That's not my style. I bruise easily and tear up at movies. That's not who I am. What I did was far worse. I chose a statement. I sent her an engagement ring while she sat across from him. Not in person. No grand proposal. No dramatic speech. Whatever. I had it delivered by a rideshare courier in a small velvet box with a handwritten note that simply read, "I hope he's worth it." No name. No explanation. Just that. And the ring. The real ring. The one I spent 3 months paying off. The one I designed with her initials engraved inside the band. The one that sat in my desk drawer while I rehearsed what I would say. Over and over. Like a madman in love. I watched from across the street. Hidden in my parked car with fogged-up windows and a heart that refused to calm down. Then it happened. She opened it. I could tell the moment the box reached their table. The courier pointed at her. She nodded, clearly confused, then smiled politely, opened the box, and her face dropped like someone had yanked the floor out from under her. He leaned in to see. She slammed the box shut. He asked something. I could see it in his raised eyebrows, in the slight lift of his hands. She shook her head, sharply said something. Then she began scanning the bar, the windows, the street. She stood up, looking terrified. Or guilty. Or maybe both. And for the first time in 2 years, she looked exactly how I felt every time I knew she was lying. That's not the crazy part. The crazy part is what happened after she found the note hidden under the velvet. Because whatever story she told him, it didn't stop what was coming. And trust me, it gets darker from here. Camille didn't move for a full 10 seconds after opening the box. From where I was sitting, I couldn't see her eyes, but I could see her hands, and they were shaking. That stood out to me. She wasn't the type of woman who shook. She was the one who made others unravel. But now, even the way she held the box seemed awkward, like it had burned her fingers, and she didn't want him to notice. Of course, he noticed. He reached for the ring. She pulled it back like it was a loaded gun. Then she looked around again, this time more slowly, like she was scanning for snipers. She didn't realize it, but she looked directly at my car. Not once, but twice. That's when I saw the change in her. She smiled. Smiled so convincingly, it almost fooled me. She handed the ring to the guy, said something, and they both started laughing again. But it wasn't the same. It was forced. She tucked the box into her purse, stood up to go to the bathroom. Or at least, that's what she wanted him to think. She left her phone face down on the table. I knew what was about to happen, and I was ready, because that wasn't the only thing I'd put in the box. Beneath the velvet cushion was a flash drive. On it, a 2-minute audio clip of her, gasping, saying things no fiancé should say to anyone who isn't their partner. Recorded, not by me, but by mistake. Left in a voice note she accidentally sent to her sister during one of her yoga retreats. Her sister, for the record, had immediately forwarded it to me with a 2-word message, "You deserve better." I saved it. Not because I'm cruel, but because when someone burns your house down while you're still asleep inside, you keep a piece of the ash to remind yourself it really happened. Now, it was with her, sitting in her purse. A digital grenade. And it was ticking. When she stepped outside, she didn't call me. She didn't try texting either. Instead, she pulled out her phone and dialed someone. Not the guy at the table. Not me. Her sister. Her pacing was erratic. Her voice was sharp. Aggressive. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the tone. Desperation drenched every movement. She wasn't acting. She was afraid. Not because of what was on the drive, but because she had no idea what else I had. And that was the point. What Camille didn't know, what no one knew, was that I wasn't planning to expose her. I wasn't going to upload anything, publicly humiliate her, or destroy everything. What I wanted was much simpler. I wanted her to live with it, to feel it, not just the guilt, but the anticipation of the collapse. I wanted her to wonder if every tap on the shoulder meant her world was falling apart. I wanted her to live in the shadow of a reveal that might never come. Because that's what I've been doing for months. Now it was her turn, and it had only just begun. By the time Camille returned to the bar, her smile had transformed into something colder. The kind of smile people wear at funerals for someone they didn't really care for. Her drink was still on the table. So was he, the man she'd been seeing behind my back. He looked confused, maybe a little irritated. I watched as she sat back down, leaned across the table, and said something with a fake chuckle. She touched his wrist, then slid her hand across the table to hold his. Her move was so calculated it almost made me laugh from inside my car. I could feel her spiraling, even from 30 feet away. But here's the thing, I hadn't even begun yet. Camille had no idea that in the days leading up to this moment, I'd spoken to two people she thought would never speak to me again. Her ex-best friend, Lana, and, of all people, her father. Both of them, who she hadn't seen in years, had a few very specific things to say. For starters, Lana had screenshots. Apparently, Camille had a pattern. I wasn't the first long-term partner she kept on a leash while testing out new options. There was a guy named Rob in 2021 and a woman named Mika before that. Both relationships ended the same way. Unexplained disappearances, sudden breakups, or, in Rob's case, a car with all his belongings thrown in garbage bags on the street. I asked Lana why she was telling me all this. She said she liked my poetry. I had once published a chapbook that Camille had never read. She also said Camille only respects people after they've ruined her, a sentence that stuck with me like gum stuck under a table, ugly but permanent. As for her father, that was a different level. He didn't say much, but what he did say was chilling. If she's doing this to you, don't confront her. She breaks things when she leaves. I didn't fully understand what that meant until later, but I trusted it. So, I didn't text her. I didn't call. I didn't even post anything on social media. I went completely dark. For someone like me, who over-explains, overthinks, and likes to process everything together, this was practically warfare. Because she would expect rage, tears, explanations, ultimatums. But silence. Silence is what manipulative people fear most. Silence means you don't know what the other person knows. Silence means they could be talking to anyone. Silence means you've lost control of the narrative. So I watched her. Not just that night, but for the next 5 days. She tried texting me twice, short messages. Hey, can we talk? I just need to explain something. She didn't call. Didn't show up at my apartment. I think she was waiting for me to explode first, to lash out so she could wear the victim's skin like she had in the past. But I didn't. I stayed silent. Until the envelope arrived. And this is where things took an unexpected turn. Inside that envelope, the one left in my mailbox with no postage, meaning she'd been at my door without knocking, wasn't a letter. It was a photograph. A printed picture of her and me from almost 2 years ago. We were lying on the grass at Deer Park, tangled up together, laughing so hard my eyes were shut. Someone must have taken the photo from a distance. It wasn't staged. It was real. And on the back, in ink, was the message, "You didn't have to go this far." No signature. Nothing else. Just that. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't afraid of what I might do. She was afraid of what I had already done. And she was right to be. Because the flash drive? That was just a warning shot. What she didn't know was that her new boyfriend, the bleach blonde, smug-smiling, whiskey-sipping Oliver, wasn't who she thought he was. And I promise you, that's a revelation you won't see coming. The message came on a Tuesday night, buried between spam emails and a receipt from a store I hadn't stepped into in weeks. The subject line read, "We need to talk." It's about her. No name. No attachments. Just a body of text that started in lowercase, like the sender didn't want to appear too aggressive, and ended with a phone number I didn't recognize. It was from him, Oliver, the bleach blonde guy across the table from Camille. The man I thought was just another fleeting mistake in Camille's ongoing catalog of distractions. But he wasn't, and what he had to say would grind everything I thought I knew into dust. I stared at the email for hours. I didn't reply. I didn't block him. I just let it sit there, vibrating in the back of my mind like a tuning fork I couldn't turn off. Something about it didn't feel right. Not dangerous, just unfinished. Around 2:40 a.m., I caved. I texted the number. One word. Talk. He called in 30 seconds. No pleasantries. No introductions. Just a calm voice, deeper than I expected, and eerily calm, which immediately made me suspicious. Listen, he said. I'm not trying to get involved in whatever this is. I didn't even know she was engaged. Hell, I didn't even know your name until 2 days ago. My chest went cold. She told me you were just some guy she used to live with, he continued. She said you were obsessed, controlling, that you threatened her when she broke it off. I didn't speak. I let the silence hang like ash. It wasn't the first time I'd been painted as the villain in her story, but hearing it from the man she replaced me with, that added a new layer of betrayal. He exhaled. But I didn't believe her. Not after last Thursday. Not after the ring. I asked him what he meant. He paused, like he was weighing two choices in his mind. One that led to exposure, the other to self-preservation. She panicked, he said finally. She went into the bathroom and called someone. I don't know who. But when she came back, she told me she needed to take care of something. Said I should leave. And when I didn't, she snapped. Said some things that didn't make sense. Like what? I asked, my voice tight. Like how you were going to flip the narrative. How you were dangerous if cornered. She was talking about how I ruined people quietly. I didn't even fully understand what that meant. But the way she said it, it wasn't fear. It was respect. She was scared of what I still had. I smiled, not out of pride, but because I realized I wasn't the only one living under Camille's mask. But then, Oliver said something I wasn't prepared for. She did the same thing to me a year ago, before she ghosted me. I froze. She was dating me back then too. Just for a few weeks, then she disappeared. No explanation. She said she was leaving town. Then I saw her with you months later, and I figured maybe I was just the side character in her story. So I let it go. But when she came back 2 months ago, it was like nothing had ever happened. She acted like everything was new, like we were new. I didn't know what to say. He wasn't lying. I could hear it in the weight of his voice, the way he chewed on his shame like it had teeth. She keeps cycling through people, he added. It's like she doesn't end things. She just leaves doors open and walks through whichever one's most convenient. Now, I understood why Lana had said, Camille only respects people after they've ruined her. Because Camille didn't end relationships. She archived them, like files, labeled but never deleted. She built a web, and I had just realized I wasn't at the center of it. I was just one thread among dozens. And then, Oliver said something else I didn't expect. Look, I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just telling you so you know you're not crazy. But one more thing. She's planning something. What do you mean? I asked, my voice tight. She asked me where you live. That stopped everything. My blood froze. My hands clenched around the phone. She hadn't been by my apartment since the ring, at least, not that I saw. Unless, the photo. She had been there. She left the envelope without knocking. And now she was asking strangers where I slept at night. This wasn't fear anymore. This was control. And I suddenly realized this wasn't about guilt. Camille wasn't scared I'd expose her. She was scared I'd take away the one thing she couldn't survive without, her version of the story. She was going to try to rewrite it. Maybe with tears. Maybe with threats. Maybe with something worse. And I wasn't going to let her. Because now I had one thing she didn't. Proof. And it was time to use it. She came to my apartment on a Thursday afternoon. Midday. Bright sunlight. The kind of harmless light people associate with lunch breaks and grocery runs. The kind of day you'd never expect someone to show up at your door and try to rewrite the past. I was upstairs sorting through a drawer of old receipts, trying to figure out what, if anything, I could get rid of from my old life. The buzzer rang once, then again, then 3 quick taps, like she knew the timing would irritate me. I didn't answer right away. I peeked through the peephole first. It was her. Hair down, sunglasses on, no makeup, which meant she was trying to look real. Camille only showed up barefaced when she wanted to appear like the truth. I opened the door halfway, keeping the chain on. We stared at each other in silence for a few moments. She didn't smile. Neither did I. Can we talk? She asked. I didn't move. Just stared at her. I think we've had enough conversations, I replied flatly. She glanced down the hall, lowered her voice, and leaned in like someone might be watching. Not like this, she whispered. Please, just 5 minutes. I didn't want to let her in, but I also didn't want her standing outside my door like some ghost of good intentions. So, I unlatched the chain and stepped aside. She walked in like she remembered every corner, didn't ask for permission, just slid her hand across the wall to find the light switch. She paused when she saw the coffee table, because there, on the table, was the flash drive, the same one that had been hidden in the ring box. She looked at it, then at me. "You didn't tell him, did you?" she asked. "You'll have to be more specific," I replied. "There's a growing list of hims lately." She rolled her eyes, but I caught the flicker of anxiety behind them. She hadn't expected me to be calm. She expected anger, heartbreak, begging. But what scared her most was this: stillness. "I didn't come to fight," she said. "I just want to explain." I sat down, not because I wanted to listen, but because I wanted her to speak long enough to trip over her own lies. Camille had a habit of rehearsing stories in her head, but she improvised the endings. That's where the lies usually slipped out. She started softly, like she was narrating a trauma she had just survived. "I know you think I'm the villain in all this," she said. "And maybe I am, but you didn't see what I was going through. I felt trapped, smothered, I couldn't breathe. You wanted a future I wasn't sure I believed in. And when I tried to tell you, you wouldn't hear it. So, yes, I pulled away. And yes, I met someone else. But that wasn't the plan. It just happened." She paused, waiting for me to react. I didn't. She sat down across from me and continued. "I didn't want to hurt you, Eldon. I never meant to. But when you sent that ring with that note, you changed something. You made it public. You made me look like a monster." "You made yourself look like that?" I said. I just stopped hiding it. She didn't like that. Her jaw twitched. She crossed her legs and started tapping her heel, the way she always did when she was getting defensive. But then she said something that flipped everything upside down. "I know what you're doing," she said slowly. "And I know who you've been talking to." I said nothing. She leaned forward, her voice low. "My father, Lana, Oliver, you think they're your allies? They're not. My father hasn't spoken to me in years because I refused to bankroll his third divorce. Lana slept with my ex and still blames me for telling his wife. And Oliver, he's been obsessed with me since I ghosted him. They'll tell you anything to get your attention." I stared at her, trying to find the lie. But what unsettled me wasn't that it could be true. It was that I'd never thought it might be. And then she took it even further. "You're not some innocent in all this," she said. "You think you're the wounded one, but you watched me, tracked me, set up some kind of public humiliation stunt. That's not love, Eldon. That's control. You didn't want to propose. You wanted to trap me." I felt something rise in my chest. Not anger, not regret, but clarity. Because in that moment, I finally understood the full scope of who she was. Camille didn't just break hearts. She rewrote history. She painted fire as warmth and trauma as misunderstanding. And now, cornered, she was weaponizing every ounce of the narrative she had left. But I had something she didn't know. I had the letter. The one Oliver gave me the night after our call. A letter Camille had written to another man, dated 3 weeks before I bought the ring. A man she'd told she was moving to Spain with. A man she promised to marry once the mess here was handled. I kept it in the drawer next to the couch. And I realized right then, I wasn't going to show it to her. Not yet. Let her spin. Let her convince herself the walls weren't closing in. Because when the collapse finally came, it wouldn't be with shouting or confrontation. It would be quiet, just like her betrayal. The next morning, I opened the door to someone I'd never seen before, yet he somehow already knew my name. He didn't look like someone Camille would have crossed paths with. He wasn't polished, smug, or part of her perfume-scented world. He was older, probably in his early 50s, with a wiry build and short sleeves, even though it was chilly for October. His face was drawn, as though it had folded in on itself over time, but his eyes were sharp, unervingly alert, like a man who never truly sleeps. "Eldon Firth?" he asked. I nodded, hesitantly, holding onto the doorframe. He reached into the side pocket of his jacket and pulled out an envelope, plain white, no markings, no return address. "She asked me to give you this. She said you'd know what it means." I didn't take it right away. "Who sent you?" "Doesn't matter," he replied, "but I knew your father." My stomach dropped. "My father's been dead for 6 years," I said, stepping back instinctively. He nodded. "I know. I served with him. Iraq, 1994. We weren't close, but he used to talk about you. Said you were too kind for the world." I took the envelope slowly, still watching him. What does Camille have to do with my father? The man didn't blink. Not Camille. Now I was confused. He turned to leave without further explanation. No dramatic exit. Just one final sentence tossed over his shoulder. Whatever you think is going on, dig deeper. You've only seen the first layer. I closed the door and locked it twice, then sat down on the floor as if I'd forgotten how chairs worked. My mind was spinning. My father, Iraq, a stranger delivering cryptic messages about layers. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, handwritten, with slanted cursive that felt strangely familiar. It made my chest tighten. The note read, "You won't believe me now. Maybe you never will. But what happened between us wasn't just betrayal, it was survival. You think I'm the architect of this mess, but I was surviving one you already built and forgot. If you want answers, start with your mother's basement, the green trunk." See, I read it 5 times before I could breathe properly. My mother's basement, the green trunk. I hadn't been back to that house in over a year, not since the funeral. I'd helped her pack a few boxes and left the rest untouched. That green trunk had always been there, shoved under the old staircase, gathering dust. It used to be my father's, military grade, thick steel, padlocked when I was a kid. I always thought it held old uniforms, medals, maybe letters. Nothing worth asking about. I never asked. Neither did my mother. But now I wasn't so sure. If Camille had seen that trunk, if she knew about it, then she'd been deeper inside my life than I realized, deeper than I ever gave her credit for. And what terrified me more than her knowing what was inside was the possibility that I didn't. I called my mother that afternoon. We hadn't spoken since a fight last Christmas, when she told me she thought Camille was performative. I snapped at her, called her bitter. We never patched things up, but I called anyway. She answered on the 3rd ring, and said nothing when she saw my name on the caller ID. "Hi," I started. "I need to come by, just for a bit. I need to check something." A long pause. "You mean the trunk?" she said. It wasn't a question. My blood turned to ice. "Did Camille talk to you?" I asked slowly. "No," she said. "But I figured this day might come." I got in the car within 15 minutes. No shower, no coat. Just keys and adrenaline. The entire drive, I kept cycling through what could be inside. Was it something about my dad? An old affair? A scandal? A crime? Why did Camille know about it? Why now? It took all my restraint not to speed. When I pulled into my mother's driveway, she was already standing on the porch. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her silver hair was pulled back into a tight braid, arms crossed. She didn't wave, didn't smile. She simply turned and walked inside without a word. I followed her through the kitchen, past the dusty piano, and down into the basement. The air smelled of mothballs and oil, that familiar childhood scent that used to feel like safety. And there it was. The green trunk, still in the shadows, still padlocked. But this time, the lock was open. "I unlocked it a year ago," she said quietly. "Thought maybe one day you'd ask." I hesitated, crouched down, then lifted the heavy lid. Inside wasn't what I expected. There were no medals, no uniforms, no dusty dog tags or sepia-toned photos of soldiers in formation. There were only 2 things, a faded photograph and a letter. The photograph was of a young woman, not my mother, not anyone I recognized. She was standing in front of a trailer, holding a baby. Behind her, scrawled across the metal siding in red paint were the words, "He is not yours." The letter was addressed to my father, dated 1995, written by someone named Delia. It began, "You told me you buried the truth, but secrets rot in silence." My vision blurred. The child in the photo, the one in the woman's arms, had my eyes. I didn't move for a long time after I saw the photo. I just sat there on the basement floor, legs folded like a child, staring at a frozen moment from almost 3 decades ago. The woman, Delia, had dark eyes, wide-set and defiant, as though she knew this picture would someday matter. Her jaw was clenched. The baby on her hip was maybe 6 months old, chubby cheeks, one sock missing. But it was the eyes, that soft amber-green color that stared back at me like a memory I hadn't made yet. The exact same eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. I looked up at my mother, standing in the corner of the basement, her hands tucked under her arms like she was holding herself together. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice brittle. She didn't answer right away. She sat down slowly, her knees cracking, and stared across the room. Not at me, not at the photo, but at the wall, like she was trying to remember something without fully reliving it. My father met her when he was stationed in North Carolina, she said. It was brief, stupid. He told me about it a year after you were born, said it was over, but then a letter came from her. I held up the letter from the trunk. This one? She nodded. He never opened it. He said if it was important, she'd call. But she never did. I asked. Oh, she did. She replied with a cold, tired smile. Once, she asked if I was Delia. When I told her I was his wife, she hung up. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. My mother shrugged. Because you were his son. You were his son. Biologically, I don't know. Emotionally, he raised you. He chose you. Sometimes, that has to be enough. I didn't respond because nothing I could say would do anything but accuse her. Instead, I opened the letter. It was short, written in scrawled handwriting with faded ink. You told me you buried the truth. But secrets rot in silence. He'll find out. Maybe not from me. Maybe not for decades. But he'll look, eventually. He's too much like me to let it go. When he does, tell him I loved him. I just couldn't stay in the shadow of a lie. Delia, no last name, no address, just pain compressed into paper. I sat there with the photo and letter in my lap. And then something occurred to me that hadn't before. Camille had sent me here. She had known about this somehow. Not just the trunk, but what was inside. That changed everything. If she knew about Delia, if she knew about this, then her entire relationship with me wasn't just toxic, selfish, or deceptive. It was calculated. But how? I stood up, my heart racing, thoughts colliding. If Camille had orchestrated this, it meant she had access to my past in ways I never gave her. It meant she had done more than cheat. She had studied me, used me, mapped my history like a blueprint, which meant there had to be a connection, something she never told me. I left my mother's house before dusk. She didn't ask me to stay. I think she knew I couldn't sit in that house another second. The silence was deafening. Too many unanswered questions echoed off the walls. I drove aimlessly for an hour. Thought about calling Oliver. Thought about calling Lana. Thought about calling Camille. I did none of those things. Instead, I drove to the university. I remembered Camille telling me once, offhandedly, that she used to audit classes at the state college when she couldn't sleep. She said sitting in on someone else's passion made her forget her own chaos. I never thought anything of it at the time. But I remembered that night because she mentioned a name. A professor she liked. Someone who taught literature and Eastern philosophy. Dr. Ari Mendel. I parked outside the campus and looked up his department on my phone. Office hours, Wednesday and Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. It was Wednesday. I walked across the quad in a fog, my heart pounding harder with every step. I didn't know what I was expecting or if he'd even know her. But I needed answers. And this was the only lead I had left that hadn't been explored. I knocked twice on the door to room 417. It was open. Inside, a tall man with a weathered face and kind eyes looked up from a stack of printed essays. He blinked at me, curious but not unfriendly. Can I help you? He asked. I stepped inside slowly. I'm sorry. I know this is weird. I'm trying to understand something. You used to have a student. Maybe not officially. Her name was Camille Ashcroft. His expression changed instantly. Not surprise, not discomfort, something in between. Recognition and regret. He gestured for me to close the door, then said the words that froze me mid-step. She wasn't a student, he said. She was my niece. I sank into the chair across from him without asking, my legs giving out. I don't know which shocked me more. The fact that Camille had never told me about this man, or the tone in his voice when he said her name. It was flat, careful, like a man describing a fire that hadn't gone out. He leaned forward, folded his hands. I always wondered when someone would come looking. Looking for what? I asked. He sighed. For the real Camille. Bye-bye.